Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of State of Mind. This will be part 30, the second half to chapter 19. Class began a while after that, and Aizawa gave a spiel about the provisional exams and ultimate moves as Cementos, Midnight, and Ectoplasm joined them. After they were given a rundown on what exactly ultimate moves were supposed to be, the class was dismissed to get changed into their hero uniforms. Izuku had to take a deep breath as he undressed in the locker room. He wasn't afraid, just a little bit anxious, but Shoto's grounding presence next to him helped him when his scars were bared to the entire class. There were so many more now, and he found himself tracing some of them with his fingers as he pulled on his undershirt. He sighed heavily, deflating slightly. The sight of his own skin saddened him. A light hand touched his shoulder, and Izuku looked up, catching sight of Shoto gazing at him with his mismatched eyes, concern filling them. "They are beautiful, because they are a part of you. Don't worry about the scars." Izuku blinked in abject surprise as Shoto's eyes widened, seemingly realizing that he had just called Izuku beautiful, albeit indirectly. He cleared his throat. "Don't forget what I said about them before." He finished and then dropped his hand, leaving the locker room. Izuku watched him go in shock until a voice on his other side jarred him out of his reverie. "Hey, nice nail polish! That's so manly!" Kirishima exclaimed, grinning sharply. And for the first time in what felt like forever, a small smile tugged at the edges of Izuku's mouth. The red-haired boy had noticed the bright neon nail polish, not the wild assortment of scars. It was at that moment that Izuku decided that the neon nail polish was now a permanent accoutrement to his hero costume. It didn't matter to him if it didn't match his hero aesthetic, or if it seemed out of place. It was there to stay. "Thank you, Kirishima," he said without stuttering, and Kirishima's pointy grin widened even further. The class gathered at Gym Gamma, the 4 teachers in a line in front of them before Cementos bent down to lay his hands against the ground. Huge pillars shot up from the ground in various lengths and sizes, apparently for the students to train on without potentially harming each other. "Terrain and other things can be prepared specifically for each student," Cementos explained, looking back at the group of students. Izuku tugged at one of the small holster spots for his migraine medication on his gauntlets, tuning out the teachers' voices unintentionally, as he considered his options. He had 2 quirks, which meant a heck of a lot of options for ultimate moves. He bet if he could control the lava rain that it could be an ultimate move, though when he had used it at Kamino, it had felt so horrible. A shudder ran through his spine at the thought, and he pinched his arm, forcing himself to focus on the here and now. He couldn't think about Kamino. He just couldn't. He forced his attention back on the teachers, on Aizawa, who was currently speaking. "The job of a hero is to save people from danger, like crimes, accidents, natural disasters, and man-made disasters. The exam to become one naturally looks at how well you're able to do that. Your ability to gather information, make decisions, move, and fight, in addition to your ability to communicate, draw people to you, and lead." Aizawa looked over at all the students, his expression deadpan. "Every year a different test is used to look at how well you're able to do those things." Izuku's gaze shifted to Midnight as she picked up the lecture. "Of those, your ability to fight is especially important to your future as heroes. If you're prepared, you won't have to worry." Ha, Izuku thought. He worried about everything all the time. There was no stopping that. Midnight continued. "Whether or not you have an ultimate move will greatly affect whether or not you pass." Izuku chewed his lower lip thoughtfully. So, the ultimate moves were extremely important then. Trying to put aside his trauma, Izuku considered the lava rain. He had to be in a certain state of mind to be able to invoke it, but he felt confident in his ability to get to that state of mind easily and without harming himself. To at least a small degree. He felt like he understood his original quirk a little bit better, especially after what All for One had told him. Nova. Izuku flinched, his head jerking up. Aizawa was watching him. Izuku looked around, noticing belatedly that the rest of the class was in the process of joining the ectoplasm clones, some of them shooting concerned glances back at Izuku. He must have gotten lost in thought. "Are you all right?" his teacher asked, his voice gruff but his eyes soft and worried. Izuku nodded. "Yeah, sorry. I'm going to work on the rain. I might need some Mentos if I can conjure it." Aizawa nodded. "Yeah, you probably would. Go ahead. I'll let him know." After that, Izuku walked over to sit in an empty area, away from the rest of the students. He folded his legs to sit cross-legged and then took a deep breath, closing his eyes and attempting to draw out the lava rain by focusing on the emotions he related to it and his desire to draw it out. It was stupid easy. Izuku felt his quirk expand through his mind, a slight pressure in his brain, and when he opened his eyes, the sludgy red precipitation was falling all around him in a controlled circle, the droplets pulling on the cement and melting it slowly. It wasn't as chaotic as Kamino. He had control of it. There was none of the same desperation and fear, none of those horrid feelings throwing the world into a hellish landscape. This was okay. He looked over at the teachers and found that All Might was there in his hero form, next to Aizawa, and they were both watching him. Yagi tossed him a thumbs up and a smile, which Izuku was grateful for. Cementos was crouched near them, hands on the ground to repair it as quickly as the rain destroyed it. Izuku nodded his thanks to the hero and then stood, satisfied now that he could control it. An ectoplasm clone tried to approach Izuku from his other side, but was immediately broken down by the rain. Izuku raised his brows thoughtfully before dropping his hands to clench into fists at his side, his eyes narrowing as he focused. Izuku tried to expand the amount of area the rain took up, growing the circumference, stretching it around on every side. How is it so easy? He couldn't even summon it at all before. The knowledge wasn't very relieving. Knowing that he could now grow the area his quirk took up, Izuku gestured for Aizawa to approach him, and the man did, frowning, letting Yagi go talk to some of the other students. His teacher paused at the edge of the rain. "What do you need, problem child?" "If I use this, I need to make sure I don't hurt civilians. I need to make sure I can keep people safe from it if I want. So, come here." Izuku gestured again, and Aizawa narrowed his eyes before blinking, as if preparing to use his quirk if need be, and stepped forward, into the rain, trusting Izuku. Izuku had had his quirk trained onto Aizawa's signature, feeling his nearness, knowing where he was at all times, and as soon as he stepped into the circle of heat, the rain made way for him. It was so easy. "Good job," Aizawa said, actually sounding surprised and relieved. "I can do better," Izuku said thoughtfully, almost giddy with excitement now. This was the first time he'd felt confident with his quirk after what had happened, and he wanted to control it, as if to show his quirk that it was his. It didn't get to do whatever it wanted. Izuku didn't want something like Kamino to ever happen again. "I think that's enough." Aizawa was shaking his head, but before he could finish, Izuku had lifted his hands, palms up. He took a deep breath and flung them outward. Someone shrieked in surprise as the lava rain spread to envelop the entire room, not touching a single person, forming a protective lava barrier around every single person in the room, even the clones. "Wow," another person said, and they were right. Wow. Izuku looked around, at what his quirk was doing, at the people awestruck by it, at Cementos, who was looking mildly stressed as he had to focus on repairing the damage as the lava destroyed the cement he made over and over again. And then suddenly it stopped. Izuku met Aizawa's red eyes, frowning. "Izuku, your nose is bleeding. That's enough for today." Izuku lifted a hand, only just now noticing the blood dripping from his nose. He recoiled, pinching his nose shut and leaning slightly forward. "Sorry," he murmured nasally. Don't worry about it, kid. You did a great job. Go see Recovery Girl and I'll see you tonight," his guardian said, voice too quiet for anyone else to hear. Izuku nodded and headed toward the door, glancing at Yagi, who offered him a smile and mouthed the words "good job" at him. Izuku sighed and left for Recovery Girl, hoping she could help relieve his developing migraine. That evening, All Might entered the student common room where Izuku waited, seated with some of the other students while a movie played in the background. Some of them were doing homework while others played a board game or read books. Izuku stood when he caught sight of All Might peering around the corner in an attempt not to be seen. "I'll be back later," Izuku whispered to Shoto, who was seated beside him. Shoto watched him go curiously. "So, you want to tell Aizawa and Mike everything, huh?" Yagi asked, deflating into his regular form when they reached the teacher's hallway. Izuku had texted him earlier, letting the hero know what he wanted to do. Izuku adjusted Wink in his arms and nodded. "I have to give my testimony to Sakauchi tomorrow morning, and Aizawa and Mike will be there." He looked down, watching his feet. He was worried. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to relive it. But he knew he had to. "I'll be there too, my boy, if you wish it." Yagi's fingers twitched at his side, as if holding back the urge to pat Izuku's shoulder. Izuku nodded. "Please, he... "Don't worry about it now, young Izuku. It's okay." Yagi spoke reassuringly. They arrived at their destination then and knocked on the door. Almost immediately, Mike was throwing open the door, grinning widely, dressed in plain jeans and a white t-shirt with his hair up in a messy bun. "Izuku! It's so great to see you. We've missed having you and Wink around. Come in." The two of them took their shoes off at the door, and Izuku immediately went to the kitchen, setting Wink down on the counter so that he could make a cup of coffee. Yagi watched on in amusement as the boy moved around as if he had lived there his entire life, despite this being the first time he had set foot in Aizawa and Mike's new rooms. "No coffee. It's late. You need to sleep. We're getting up early for the police station," Aizawa said, entering the kitchen with a scowl and swiping the mug from Izuku's hands and taking a gulp from it. "I'll sick Wink on you. Give it back," Izuku growled, reaching for it. Aizawa smirked, easily holding it up out of his reach. "Guess you're just too short." Aizawa grinned evilly. Izuku's eyes narrowed. "I can jump really high." "All right, boys, calm down," Mike mediated. "Here, Izuku, it's tea. It's not as good as coffee, but it's still great because I made it." Izuku sighed, but took the proffered mug and then trudged to the familiar couch, Wink jumping down and trailing after him, leaping to his lap when he collapsed into it. Chuckling, Yagi crossed the room and sat next to his successor. Mike and Aizawa pulled up a couple of chairs to the other side of the coffee table and settled into them. "So, what did you two need to talk to us about?" Mike asked brightly, taking a sip from his own tea. Izuku gestured to Yagi, who leaned back, as if he hadn't expected to be the one doing all the talking. Izuku wondered what he thought was going to happen. Izuku certainly wasn't talking more than he needed to. This was on All Might. Besides, these were Izuku's guardians and teachers. They had deserved to know a long time ago. There just hadn't been a great time. There had always been something more important going on. Well," Yagi began, clearing his throat. Aizawa looked at the man dryly. "I guess I'll just start from the beginning. It's a long story, though, so you might want to settle in." Yagi scratched the back of his neck. It had been a long time since he had told anyone about it, not counting Izuku. It was strange. "Long ago, a man with a quirk that could steal other quirks and give them away forcibly gave his seemingly quirkless younger brother a quirk that allowed him to stockpile power within his body." Yagi began, and Izuku tuned him out, leaning back with a sigh and closing his eyes, not allowing himself to fall asleep, but to relax against the couch with Wink curling up on his chest. "One for All stockpiles the original quirk of the user, which is why Izuku's became so powerful. Izuku perked up at what sounded like the end of the spiel. He glanced at the teachers. Mike looked a combination between confused and worried, and Aizawa just looked like his usual expressionless self, with a hint of exasperation glinting in his eyes. "Okay," Mike said, drawing out the word as he thought. He screwed his face up, frowning. "Don't think too hard. You'll get an aneurysm," Aizawa teased flatly at Mike, and Izuku snorted loudly with choked laughter. Aizawa raised a brow at him, amused, before directing his attention back to All Might. "So, Izuku has two quirks, one of which can materialize a hellscape, and the other that makes that hellscape even stronger. And you thought this was a good idea, All Might." Yagi grimaced, but nodded resolutely. "Izuku is the best successor I could ever ask for. He has made one for all his very own, and I could not be more proud of him." Izuku bent at the waist, burying his face in Wink's fur in embarrassment. Yagi chuckled fondly at his protégé's antics. "That's why you needed to tell us," Mike said suddenly, his voice shocked as he sat up straighter. "One for All's mortal enemy had Izuku. Oh, shit. Izuku." He was watching Izuku now as he tensed, holding Wink closer to him. "Not yet," he said, his voice thick. In the morning. I'll talk in the morning." "That is perfectly fine, my boy," Yagi reassured. Izuku swallowed and released his tight grip on Wink to grab his tea, needing to distract himself with something. "Well, thanks for telling us. But Izuku, you should go get some sleep before the long day tomorrow," Aizawa sighed. Izuku grimaced, and Mike frowned, sensing Izuku's reluctance to be alone. "How about you sleep here, little listener? Then we won't have to collect you in the morning." Izuku looked at Mike then as if he had just hung the moon, eyes wide. "I'll go change. Be right back," Izuku said, and then left the room quickly, Wink prancing after him. All three adults watched him, and then sagged into their respective seats. Aizawa gave a heavy sigh. "Think he got any sleep last night?" Mike asked softly. "Doubtful. Did you see the bags under his eyes?" Aizawa grumbled, and stood up to grab more coffee. "Hey, you shouldn't be drinking that either," Mike yelled. Aizawa waved a hand dismissively. Mike sighed the weary sigh of someone who knew it would do nothing to argue, and turned to Yagi. "How are you doing, Yagi? Isn't your time limit shorter?" Yagi gritted his teeth and nodded. "Yes, it's down to at most an hour a day. I actually have a plan in place for retirement, but—" Yagi trailed off. "It's just difficult to know when the best time is," Aizawa guessed, returning with another coffee clutched in one hand. Yagi nodded. "Well, I don't think you'll ever actually feel ready," Mike shrugged. Then his face fell slightly. "Think the little listener will be okay tomorrow?" Aizawa sat down, setting his feet upon the coffee table. "No, I don't. But we'll just have to be there for him, won't we?" The other two heroes nodded resolutely. What do you think All for One did to him?" Mike asked softly, his voice pained. Yagi looked away, frowning, teeth gritting. "He would have done whatever he could to get one for all. The fact that Izuku didn't give it to him is astounding." Mike paled, grimacing. They were quiet after that. After that, Yagi left, and then Izuku returned, showered, changed, and with an armful of blanket, and his bag on his back with Wink standing happily in it. He shut the door behind him, and then dumped the blankets onto the couch. He set the yellow cat bag off to the side, and then collapsed into the blankets. "Can I bring Wink tomorrow?" he asked, voice muffled from where his face was buried in the fabric. "I'm sure it won't be a problem," Aizawa answered. Izuku hummed in answer and let his aching body and head relax into the pile. He was so tired. Let us know if you need anything, kid, his teacher added, voice more gentle this time, before he walked away, leaving Izuku to try to get some sleep. The morning after that had the three teachers entering the police department and being led into a small room that surprisingly had couches and various things for distraction in it. The cat-headed police officer, Sansa, had three of them sit inside, and then they were told that Tsukauchi would be in shortly. Izuku was nervous, and he didn't know if having both his new guardians and his mentor present for the testimony was a good idea. He just knew that it was stuff they all should hear, and Izuku didn't want to have to repeat himself. After gathering a water bottle and sitting down, Izuku watched as Tsukauchi walked into the room, a person with bright orange hair and kind eyes trailing after him. "This is Yasu." Tsukauchi gestured to the person behind him, who smiled evenly at them. "Their quirk emits a kind of calming pheromone. I had a feeling it would be a good idea for Midoriya here." Mike immediately nodded, and Yagi glanced at Izuku. "Are you okay with that, my boy?" Izuku considered it for a moment and then nodded. "Probably a good idea." He was really nervous and his palms sweated uncomfortably. The area where his missing finger was ached with phantom pain, and he clenched his hands in the fabric of his pants, trying to resist the urge to bite his painted nails. He didn't want to destroy the effort Shoto had put into them. Yasu walked forward, their slitted yellow eyes kind. "Hello, Izuku. It's nice to meet you. I understand what you're being asked to remember and talk about is painful, but I will do my best to make it easier for you." Thanks," Izuku swallowed, averting his gaze. Yasu smiled and stepped back, sitting down in a padded chair in the corner of the room. Tsukauchi himself was seated in front of the teachers and Izuku, papers spread out before him. "Are you ready to get started, Izuku?" Izuku took a deep breath and lifted his chin with determination, his eyes steely. Tsukauchi turned sideways to nod at Yasu, who lifted their sleeves, and Izuku realized distantly that their quirk must be a lot like Midnight's. His anxiety swelled, and Izuku undid the zipper on his book bag, letting Wink out and lifting her up, pulling her against his chest. She was an immense help, and he knew he wouldn't be able to do this without her. He wanted her close to him. Izuku was steadily feeling worse, though, his chest constricting and his skin itching like a billion ants were crawling over it. And then Izuku breathed in, and a wave of calmness washed over him. Tsukauchi gestured for him to begin. So Izuku did. The four exited the police station a little over an hour later, and Izuku was incredibly proud of himself. He'd only broken down once, and that was really so much better than he'd anticipated he would do. Yasu's quirk was definitely part of that, but still, it was an achievement, and he was going to let himself celebrate it as such. "Great job, kid," Aizawa said, as they all climbed into the car to head back to UA for class, Mike driving. Izuku blushed and settled against the window, Wink watching him from her little dome in his backpack. "You did well, my boy. I'm proud of you," All Might said, having recovered from his horror at what Izuku had relayed. Izuku sputtered at his words, though, blinking rapidly. Yagi said that phrase so much and so easily, as if he had no idea that Izuku had never heard them elsewhere. Izuku leaned against the window of the car. He was tired. Izuku was oh so tired, and he wasn't looking forward to a long day of classes after reliving the trauma of Kamino, speaking it out loud to his teachers and Tsukauchi. He hoped the day would go by easily and without any trouble. A couple hours later, Izuku was back in his hero uniform, cleaned of any blood from the previous day's nosebleed, and the class was drawing to an end. He had practiced with One for All this time and was pretty exhausted, ready for a shower and maybe a nap. Then Class 1B suddenly appeared, Vlad King telling everyone to get out. Izuku ignored him, eyeing Monoma warily, just waiting for the little shit to go off. And of course he did. "Hey, look at you," he cackled, pointing at Izuku, who tensed. "You're the one that let himself get kidnapped. And the rest of Class 1A who were there didn't do anything. How do you expect to become heroes when you can't even—" Izuku had begun marching forward, the warnings from his classmates passing right over his head. Vlad King watched in confusion, Aizawa in amusement, and All Might in concern, as Izuku marched straight up to Monoma and lifted a hand, palm out, and slapped the shit out of the boy, all 4 fingers connecting with his cheek and ripping him off the face of the planet. He then adjusted the hem of his gauntlet and turned around to find his entire class staring at him in surprise. "What?" he shrugged. "I warned him last time. I'm too exhausted for his shit. I've had a long day." Aizawa walked forward, sighing. "Problem child. Bring him back. Don't make me use my quirk on you." Izuku narrowed his eyes. "Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Who knows what would happen to a human in my mindscape if my quirk was erased?" Some of the students paled at that, and Aizawa practically glared at the green-haired child in front of him. "If you don't bring him back, I'll take away your coffee privileges." Izuku gasped. "You wouldn't." Aizawa grinned that evil, toothy grin of his. "I would." Izuku scowled, but lifted a hand, gritting his teeth as he brought Monoma back. The blonde landed in an unceremonious tumble of arms and legs. "The fuck was that?" he screeched uncharacteristically. Izuku took one step toward him, a hard look in his eyes as he ignored the capture weapon that wrapped around his waist, holding him back. "Fuck you, Monoma. Mess with Class 1A again. I dare you." The blood drained out of his face as Kendo lifted the boy up by his collar, bowing an apology for her classmate's actions. "Not your fault," Izuku told her, burning eyes leveled at the copy quirk user in her hand. After that, the capture weapon fell away, and Izuku left the gym, some of his friends rushing to catch up with him. "Jeesh, dude, that was so manly." Kirishima pumped one fist in the air, the spikes in his hair practically vibrating with his vigor. Izuku grunted in response as they made their way to the locker rooms to change. Some time later had most of the class in the dorm common rooms. Izuku was lounging on the floor with his back against the couch as his nails dried and Wink was on Koda's lap. Shoto had touched his nails up, and they looked shiny and new. Izuku blew on them as he watched the movie playing in front of him. It was some older Disney film that he was unfamiliar with. He had never really watched many movies growing up or recently. Everyone looked up when Yaoyorozu stepped out of the elevator and moved toward the common room, holding something large behind her back, looking kind of embarrassed. "Mido," she voiced, and Izuku sat up, tilting his head inquisitively. Someone paused the movie as she moved closer. Izuku stood, and she bashfully pulled out what she was hiding behind her back and presented it to Izuku. Izuku lifted shaky hands and took it, making sure to keep one finger up on each hand as he looked down at the art, his breath freezing in his chest. "Holy shit," he gasped. In his hands was a large canvas covered in brilliant artwork, a skeleton wearing a spacesuit, laying in a field of pink roses, that type of flower signifying trust and happiness. In the background, a spaceship rested. There was one window on it, and a one-eyed black cat peered out of it, obviously Wink. The grass was red, and the sky was a soft yellow. A beaten path led through craggy rocks from the spaceship to where the skeleton astronaut rested. Someone gently pulled the canvas out of Izuku's hands as a droplet splashed onto the front of it. I'm sorry. It's bad, isn't it? I shouldn't have." Yaoyorozu shook her head, self-conscious that she had made Izuku cry. No, it's amazing," Izuku moaned. It's... Izuku's voice failed him, and he buried his face in his arms. Shoto rubbed his back gently. From the other side of the room, Kirishima took off running up the stairs, screaming something unintelligible. Izuku wiped his face, looking through his messy hair at Yaoyorozu, who looked extremely apprehensive. "Your walls were bare, and you liked that shirt, and I just thought you might like some decoration." I added Wink and made the world look like what we saw of your mindscape. I have always liked to paint. I took classes growing up. There was a time I thought I would be an artist instead of a hero." The black-haired girl trailed off as Izuku spread his arms out slightly. Yaoyorozu's jaw dropped, but she nodded, and Izuku leaned forward, hugging her tightly. "Thank you so much," he mumbled over her shoulder. A smile spread across Yaoyorozu's face as Izuku pulled back. "It was no problem, Mito." "Call me Izuku," he murmured, and Yaoyorozu's eyes widened. "Yaomomo works for me, if you want," she answered, her own eyes glistening. Izuku nodded. Kirishima suddenly returned from the end of the stairs, panting heavily, something fabric clutched in his hands. "I made something too," he screeched, interrupting Izuku and rushing over to him. Izuku looked up at him, eyes wide and deep. Kirishima lifted up the small piece of black and green fabric he was clutching. "It's for Wink," he said with a toothy grin. He lifted up a green flap on the back of it. "It's a hero costume for Wink. It has a cape, and I embroidered the words Hero Wink on both sides." "You sew?" Yaoyorozu asked, almost surprised. "Yeah," Kirishima thumped his chest. "I took her measurements in secret to make this. Every man should be able to sew." "It is a very important skill to have," Ida nodded from his place on the couch as he pushed his glasses up on his nose. "You guys," Izuku was beginning to look rather wan. Koda approached then, holding Wink up as she reached forward to bat at the straps on the bottom of the caped vest. "Can I put it on her?" Kirishima asked Izuku, who nodded weakly. Koda and Kirishima both crouched then, and they put the vest on her. She didn't fight it at all, and when they finished, Wink bent sideways and sniffed at the cape curiously before turning in a circle as if to test her mobility, which seemed fine. When she finished her circle, she sat down and licked a paw, scrubbing it over her face. Izuku's chest hiccuped with a sob, and he pressed a hand against his mouth. "Oh my gosh!" Ashido exclaimed, pulling out her phone to take 100 pictures. "She is adorable!" Shinso entered the room then, drawn in by the noise. "Oh no." His eyes widened as they zeroed in on Wink. "That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire fucking life." "Language!" Ida exclaimed, chopping a hand through the air. Shinso smiled, a grin eerily similar to Aizawa's, as he pulled out his phone to take rapid-fire pictures. "Can I put these on social media?" Ashido asked, without looking at Izuku. Sure," he stuttered in response. "I have quite the following, especially after the sports festival." She smiled. "They're all gonna love this." Wink tilted her head directly at Ashido's phone's camera, and the pink girl squealed, spamming the camera button. More tears were running down Izuku's face faster than he could wipe them away. "Thank you all so much," he moaned, leaning forward so that his face was at least partially covered with his curls, his shoulders shaking. "Have you not gotten gifts before?" Yaoyorozu asked, concerned by his emotional reaction. Izuku pointed to Shoto. "Only from me." Shoto frowned. Izuku nodded, eyes seeping. "Oh," Yaoyorozu said, and then squared her shoulders. "Well, you can expect more from where that came from. I'm making one for Shoji now, though." From the other couch, Shoji straightened, eyes widening. "You're making one for me. Why?" "Yes, you," Yaoyorozu said. "And because you deserve it. No one should have walls that bare." The multi-armed boy seemed to frown beneath his mask, eyes crinkling. "More importantly," she added, smoothing down her pink t-shirt, "we have an early start tomorrow, so we should turn in." Some of the students agreed reluctantly, cleaning up snacks and various items about the room. Izuku, still sniffling, picked up the canvas from the couch where Shoto had put it. "I have sticky things for walls you can use to hang it up if you want." I could help," Shoto offered, and Izuku nodded gratefully. He didn't have anything like that. At his feet, Wink meowed, asking to be picked up, and Izuku tucked the canvas lightly under his left arm, and then picked Wink up with his right hand, tucking her against his shoulder and supporting her back against his forearm. Her cape waved in the wind his walking caused as they headed to the elevator. Shoto stopped to grab some wall cling things, and then the two of them headed to Izuku's room. "Where do you want it?" he asked Izuku, looking around the room. Izuku frowned as he set the canvas against one of the walls. After a moment, Izuku pointed to a spot up high, opposite his nook, so that he'd be able to see it while he was inside. Shoto nodded, and then together they hung it up, standing back when they were done to admire their work. "Thank you." Izuku ran a hand through his hair, smoothing it away from his face. "You've been talking a lot more. Have you been feeling a bit better? I was really worried. And when you didn't return to your room last night." Shoto grimaced, looking away from Izuku. "I feel a bit better," Izuku nodded. "Not great. He scratched the crisscross scars on his cheek, frowning. He sighed. "I feel better. And last night I was staying with—" Izuku trailed off, brows furrowing. It wasn't necessarily a secret, was it? Neither Aizawa nor Mike had ever told him not to tell anyone that they were his guardians, though Mike had mentioned that he didn't want Izuku to tell anyone they were married. He was sure Shoto wouldn't tell anyone, though, and Mike even said that people would probably find out about it now that they all lived in such close quarters. Shoto was watching him, as if sensing his dilemma. "Can you keep a secret?" Izuku asked him. Shoto's eyebrows shot into his hair, and he leaned forward, immediately perking up at the prospect of a secret. Izuku must have forgotten that the boy liked conspiracy theories and secrets. "Yeah, I can keep secrets," he told him. Izuku nodded, having expected nothing different. He moved over to his nook and climbed in, gesturing for Shoto to join him. Shoto seemed shocked, but followed, settling in front of Izuku, their knees touching. "So, Izuku frowned, petting Wink when she climbed onto his lap, still wearing her hero costume. "Well, first, promise not to tell anyone, just in case." Shoto frowned but nodded. "I promise." "Okay, so Mike and Aizawa are married," he said, straight to the point. Shoto gasped, leaning back, his head brushing the rainbow canopy. "And they're both my legal guardians." Shoto gasped even harder, eyes wide, staring at Izuku as if he was waiting for the punchline. Izuku chewed his nails nervously. No one else knew. It was weird to finally tell someone. Shoto cleared his throat, blinking. "Mike and Aizawa." Shoto seemed to be having trouble. "And they adopted you." Izuku blinked. He hadn't thought of it like that. He simply shrugged in response. Legal guardianship had been transferred. Was that the same thing as adopting? Had Aizawa and Mike adopted him? The thought was very weird, and he didn't know why he hadn't considered it yet. "Wow, that is surprising," Shoto muttered, forehead creased in thought. "I never would have guessed this. I need to, A short bubble of laughter spilled out of Izuku's mouth, and Shoto looked up, more surprise evident on his face. "Did you just laugh?" Izuku, as surprised as Shoto, shrugged, a small smile on his face. Shoto, cheeks turning red, cleared his throat and climbed out of the nook. "Well, we should get some sleep. There's more ultimate move training in the morning. Make sure to let me know if you need anything." "You too," Izuku answered, and Shoto looked at him oddly, but nodded. He left after that, and the room felt emptier without him. Izuku sighed and got up to turn off the light, before snuggling into the nook with Wink. Their days of training passed by quickly, and the morning of the exam was upon the students. Izuku walked into the kitchen, eyes half-lidded and hands reaching for the coffee pot, seemingly of their own accord. It was early, but Izuku was grateful that he had managed to get at least a little bit of sleep that night. The coffee would cover the rest, and maybe he could steal one of Shinso's energy drinks. He was sure that today was going to be a long day. He just hoped nothing went wrong. Izuku walked to the couch in the common room, with his mug and melted into it, summoning a granola bar into his hands from his mindscape. A grunt for attention had Izuku turning his head. Shinso was lying on his stomach along the other couch, eyes half-lidded. He was making grabby motions with his left hand at Izuku. Izuku snorted and tossed him the granola bar, summoning another one for himself as it landed on the purple-haired boy's back. It wasn't much later that the class was riding in the bus toward the National Dagoba Arena for the Provisional licensing exam. Izuku sat next to Shoto, and he had his headphones in his ears, his eyes closed and his breathing even. Shoto's leg against his kept him grounded, despite having his eyes closed, so he wasn't afraid. He wondered how the provisional exam was going to go, what the tests were going to be. He hoped that he would be able to do well. He didn't want to disappoint any of the people that were counting on him. All right, listeners, this concludes the second half to Chapter 19. Chapter 20 will be up next. I'm eager to hear the thoughts and reactions to this one because this chapter has a lot going on with it. Definitely a good bit of information was dropped. We see Izuku finally telling everybody kind of what happened, especially the adults, the heroes, with the trip to the police station to talk to Tsukauchi, and the support that he's been able to have with Yagi to share the secret of One for All as well. So there's been a lot of truths being revealed. On that same token, we also see Shoto being let in on the secret that Izuku's been adopted by Aizawa and Mike. Let's just call it what it is, although Izuku's finally coming to that realization himself. And also, there's a lot of good bantering and adorable Dadzawa moments that occur between Izuku and Aizawa in this one. Some good humor centered around them and coffee specifically. So I really want to hear what you thought. Again, as always, if you have an opportunity to slide over to AO3, leaving those comments, kudos, and support to the original authors, sure, it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.